Got news and institutions again, back in action, continuing our conversation with Becky Wasserman. And we're going through some language on the Capitol bill. And Becky, we just went over with Deanna. It was on the old section, on the old draft, it was section 21, lines 11 through 14. We're going to ask either VGS or AOA to come in and just to make sure that they could be fine with that language or whatever. And it basically says, prior to the sale of the building located at 108 Cherry Street, Burlington, the Department of Building and General Services shall work with the city of Burlington to find another appropriate location in downtown Burlington to relocate state employees who provide client services. So we just want to talk with them because it kind of flies in the difference of what maybe their intentions are, and maybe we need to change some of that language. So that's all we've done since you've been gone.
Okay. Sounds good. Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. I will just finish. I'll go back to the beginning part of the bill just to go through the language in the money section, just to.
Do we want to refer to 6.1 again or the new one?
I can refer to which I have both copies, whichever one.
I'll take 1.6.
Okay. It's the same language, so.
Earlier.
Yeah.
The earlier copy was only,
Yeah.
only because that's what we've been on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in draft 1.6 on page 14, just wanted to note this language here. So this is in the clean water section of the bill. So in the first year, this has been happening for, I think, the last 2 bienniums. In the first year of the biennium, there are the projects for the clean water are appropriated out, and then the second year, there's a lump sum set aside. And there's a process set up in the language, which I'll go through now, which basically says in subsection F that the Clean Water Board is going to review and recommend projects to be funded from that lump sum in the second year. And they will do that by December 1st of 2023, and then submit that list of programs for to be recommended in the next year's capital bill and the capital budget adjustment to the chairs of the institutions committee and to the governor to be included in the capital budget adjustment report. And then in subsection G, this directs that any agency that receives funding from this clean water section has to consult with the state treasurer to ensure that the projects are capital eligible. So this is just setting up the process for how you're going to get the recommendations for clean water funding for next year's capital bill.
Okay, so look here.
Is this something that we normally do?
Yes, this has been done the last, I think, 2 bienniums.
But is that even $10 million now, or did they cut that down to $4 million?
That I believe is 10
That's still
million.
Okay, it is, okay. So I'm just looking at the wrong one. Okay,
Yeah, so that's basically saying, come back in December and tell us how to allocate that $10 million.
I'm good with that, as long as the committee's good with that. Good.
Okay. Next on page 17, for the vets home, the committee touched on this a bit yesterday with the allocations. So as a reminder, there were some vets home appropriations over the last number of years where the money was unexpended. So in this year's bill, it is being reallocated back to the bottom line, and then there's appropriations for those projects again in this year's bill.
And you remember, that's how we got the 2 extra lines on there,
Yeah.
because, okay, you know.
And so on page 17, line 11, there's some language there that is asking the vets home by January 15th of next year to submit a report to the 2 committees on the status of the unexpended funds of those two line items and a timeline of when any remaining funds will be expended.
And I think that's fair only because if they've let enough money sit there for a long enough time to where they should probably get back with us, and maybe that will light a fire under them to get where they need to get to.
That would be it. The basement, kitchen, and everything.
That'd be a field trip.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind going there sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so page 21, section 16. This is boilerplate language that is pretty much is in every bill related to the authorization of the treasurer to issue general obligation bonds to fund the appropriations in this act. This is pretty much the same every year, but I just wanted to point you to this. Which
Which is authorized to the treasurer.
Right, and that 108 million that's authorized is the amount that CDAC recommended was a prudent amount of bonding
Right.
for the biennium.
Is there any, interest rate or any parameters other than the total amount of the bond?
There's nothing, I mean, the treasurer is, with the approval of the governor, determines the appropriate form and maturity of the bonds that are authorized by this section.
This committee room chairs, the sum of $2 million.
I was
Are
trying
you
to hide
looking
that.
at the reallocations?
I'm trying to hide that.
Too late.
What page is that?
Top of page 21.
What is it?
You now appropriate $2 million to.
$2,000.
$2,000, okay.
And 46 cents.
46 cents, okay, that's what.
I'm gonna get rid of the cents.
I know. Move it Sunday, sure.
Say Christ, we all get on the chairs. Well, the chair's chair.
Yeah, the chair's
Oh,
chair.
that's what you
Yeah,
want.
yeah.
Okay,
Well, we
all
call
right.
that a throne.
Him and Alex.
Throne.
Throne.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So moving on to page 22, section 17. This is the, this is gonna be where it's a little,
Is that what we now call the reserve fund?
yes, I'm just realizing this is where the draft 1.6 is gonna be actually different. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
going to be correct. in
Okay, you want us to
comparison
switch
to
the other one?
Yeah, to
Okay.
the House passed version, because there was an amendment to consolidate section 17 and 18.
And so what lines did you leave off on? And I'll just put a note here to refer to new section.
So, page, section 17.
Okay,
So,
so
section,
refer to new,
yeah,
refer to new draft, refer to new draft.
On page 22.
Yeah.
They're both actually page 22.
Are they? Yeah. On page 22. Okay,
okay. So, section 17 has the FY 24 and 25 capital projects that will be the intent and authorizations for those projects to be funded from the reserve fund. This section refers to the fund in 32 VSA 1001B rather than the name of the fund, because currently the name of the fund is different than what is being proposed to change in the big bill. So I wanted to avoid referencing a fund name that was going to change upon enactment of the big bill. So that's why it is referred to in this way.
okay.
And it will be called,
It will
The
be
reserve fund?
the Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund.
yeah.
The rest
So
of
the
it,
CIRF,
CIRF, yes.
correct.
the rest of that section's the same.
Yeah, so I'll go through so there's subsection A is just findings that, in addition to funding capital projects from general obligation bonds, they may also be funded from this reserve fund. And then subsection B is intent language that the General Assembly is authorizing the projects that are eligible for funding from that fund in the capital bill, but that they will be appropriated in the big bill.
So I got a question for both Dan and you and Nicholas. So Jane's going to park some money in that, and she's going to fix the funding on that. To make it a, however, whatever she decides to do. If she was gonna get it to the 4%, but it wasn't gonna be all in general funds, it was gonna be up to 4%, not to exceed, and she was gonna use a couple funding mechanisms. At this point in time, we really don't have to work on any language on that reserve fund, that capital reserve fund. Would that be a correct statement at this point in time?
The language, the enabling language for that fund is in the big bill, so if there are language changes, it would happen in Senate appropriations. I would be the one drafting it, so I could of course come and talk to you all to go through whatever.
Okay, because there's some things in there. One of them is that they changed the intent of what that bill would do and how it would fund. And to Senator Harrison's point made yesterday, we just want to be consistent with how the cash is used in that fund. Originally, when we set that up last year, we used it on the cash fund to fund anything that normally wouldn't be expensed over 20 years. And so we had that language explicitly in there. Now that they've changed it, they've made it more like the capital bill to projects that would be expensed over 20 years. And where the fund was originally going to be used for planning and drafting and stuff like that, where you didn't want to expense monies over there because it would, basically some project would never see the light of day. Now they've changed the language to where it's more like the capital bill, that it would have to be projects that were expensed over 20 years. So that's just my concern on the language of that bill, and maybe we can raise it with Jane again or whatever. I mean, we just have to be consistent with the language of what we're going to use that for. And
so I can come back, and if you have proposed changes that you want to make, I can.
Committee,
I can
you
do a
guys
markup
remember
of
that? Yeah,
so-
we gotta spend some time on that.
I do think there's a couple things to think about.
And I'll talk
First-
with Jane as well.
I do think the language that came over from the House Appropriations Committee does allow for planning, design, and architectural costs, because forgetting off the top of my head, but I think it allows for costs associated with the
Okay.
capital project, so I think that covers those types of costs. And then the other issue is if you change the language to be for projects that don't have a lifespan of 20, have a lifespan of less than 20 years. I don't know, I'd have to go through what is in there right now. I don't know if that changes any of the appropriations that are being proposed.
What I'll do is I'll have a conversation with Jane as far as how she's going to handle the language in there as far as for the funding portion of it. And then we'll all get back together and we'll figure that out as a committee if we've got to go down through that. At some point in time before that's final, we need to take a look at it regardless, just to make sure, because we're gonna have to sign off on it. So
And that was different from the way it was originally created.
it is. It was some language. And Becky, I might have missed exactly. I mean, absolutely positively, you're saying that's in there, and so I've missed it. And
Yeah, I do actually have it. So for the architectural cost issues, so it does allow for engineering and architectural costs directly associated with the proposed capital project. I don't know if there's any other associated costs that would be excluded from that. And then.
Can you say it again?
engineering and architectural costs directly associated with a proposed capital project.
Okay, so I guess like permitting, but maybe that's,
Design and engineering.
yeah, it's not, yeah, but permitting.
It's 3 million.
Yeah, I know.
Jeez, that's before we put a shovel in.
I know.
Wow.
Well, and then why carry those costs through? So it sounds like anyways, if Jane's going to, because they've taken out the funding mechanism and that portion of it, I believe. And so Jane's going to restore that. So it sounds like it's gonna be rewritten some anyways.
Okay,
And
I
we were
will,
reading, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So you're reading from the big bill, the regular.
bill that
budget.
passed by, the House passed version of the big.
Oh, are they?
My only sort of caveat to all this is that if you change the language of this section, we just have to make sure that it's not making one of the projects that is being proposed to be paid from the fund this year ineligible to be
Right.
paid for from that fund.
Right, I'm not drastically looking, I just want to be consistent with how it was set up originally and where it's at. And then, and I think that they did take the funding mechanism out. Jane's gonna change the funding mechanism, so it's going to have to be revised anyway, so I just want to make sure that we look at it.
We're spending 2.3 million in Cherry Street Garage anyway.
Are we?
On page 24.
24?
Was that temporary repairs or something before we sell it or?
Oh, that's 32 Cherry Street
Yeah.
and not 108.
That's not 108.
Oh, that's not, that's courthouse,
Yeah.
must be.
Um,
It's a parking garage. See the courthouse parking garage.
I'm not actually sure what 32 Cherry Street is.
Yeah, it must be. The other, there's a courthouse in it.
The other parking garage, we're gonna,
That's what I thought. No, that's why.
I don't know, I was
That
being
grabbed me,
blunt.
it said parking garage, but it must be the courthouse down the street. Okay.
So that is
Yeah,
page
she
20.
taught me yesterday, actually, that, yeah.
So those are the lists, those projects are all in subsection C. There are the list of all the projects that have spending authority in the bill in FY '24. And the numbers, the amounts that they are authorized to spend are the same amounts that are appropriated in the big bill for each of these projects.
Aren't some of those for 2 years?
This is just FY '24. The FY '25 projects are dealt with differently. So part of, I think, the challenge of having the reserve fund for capital projects is that the capital bill is a 2-year bill and the big bill is a 1-year bill. And so we can't appropriate in FY '25 from the big bill. So for the FY '25 projects on page 26, there is intent language for these FY '25 capital projects that it's the intent to appropriate at these amounts for these projects.
That's it. Can I ask another question?
why didn't we discuss?
So, that's great, so that the contractor has some sort of confidence that the project will continue, right? I mean, it's
Right,
really
and-
important, but, so some of the things, because I thought the 9 million was for the first 2 years, for the 9.8 million with the clean water. I thought that was for 24 and 25, but we probably could just appropriate it for 24, and then if there's carryover,
Oh, for the IIJA.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, you could appropriate that for FY '24. I'd have to think about
Well,
that.
we're showing it in this, in the
As-
spreadsheet
as
at least,
just an
as
FY
a one,
'24.
yes.
Yeah, then,
So you just appropriate the big amount, the large amount, just so that you have it to carry over.
yeah, I mean, I guess the trick is that capital, part of the language in this fund is that the spending authority is only, the new language that's being proposed is that the spending authority is only good for 2 years. So if you appropriate it, if you give the spending authority this year, then it would only last for 2 years unless that is amended by next year. Bill, so I don't know how many years forward, you'd be giving this, you'd be able to give this spending
Yeah.
authority.
Be careful, it's all happening.
Right, I guess, well, the 2-year I thought was a new thing that was kind of reducing the years that you had to spend it rather than extending the years you had to spend it. But some things are, some items have 1 year and some items have only the 2nd year. But we know that there are items that have a 1 year vote is meant to cover both years. So maybe I can just talk to them about it.
Sorry, are you talking about just the cash, the
Yeah.
reserve fund, or are you talking about the bonded?
Some of that,
I was talking about the cash, but I see it on the other, but maybe on the other it's treated differently.
So for the bonded dollars, typically
Yeah, I'll
it's
go back to that.
applicable, like last year, and the year before we had the reserve fund. The capital bill is typically a 2-year bill, so you appropriate for both years, knowing that in the 2nd year, it's a budget adjustment and can be changed.
Okay,
The budget bill, though, they do the FY 24 Appropriations Act, and then when you all come back in January, you do the budget adjustment for FY 24. So it's just a different, it's a 1-year bill with the budget adjustment happening next year.
okay, and this part, the capital budget is the part that is more normal for the state, right? The reserve is the new thing, so that's
Yes.
what might be weird.
Yeah,
This
so I
one
think,
is
yeah, so that's,
consistent with-
yeah, that's how we've always, or not always, I think this changed a
Or-
little bit before I came here. I'm not sure the year, but
Okay,
it's somewhat in the recent past, it went from a 1-year to a 2-year budget for the capital budget. The reserve fund is just, I think, complicating it because that's new, and since it's being appropriated from the big bill and that's a 1-year bill, I think we just have to sort of figure out how to reflect that the intent is for these projects to sort of keep moving forward with the amount of dollars there, so that, what is the intent of the General Assembly to do? But it's not going to be appropriated for that year until next year.
okay. Thanks.
To add there.
No,
To the complication.
I think you stated it clearly, so I won't risk muddying the waters by trying to.
Yeah.
okay, where we at, Beck?
Page 27, subsection E.
Go back to the 1.6.
Or we're gonna stay on the one?
Okay.
I'm sorry, say again.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know it was 1.6 referred to. Yeah, the as passed house version, on page 27.
Yep.
This is just trying to set up a process for the reserve fund going forward. So this is for by December 15th of 2023. There would be a review and recommendation of the capital projects to be funded from this reserve fund by the Secretary of Administration. And then they would submit the list of capital projects recommended for FY 25 to the chairs of the.
Is that standard stuff? Is that new stuff?
That's new because this is a new process.
Okay, because it's a new fund.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So it's, I mean, you all did get those recommended projects this year in with the governor's capital budget report. So this is sort of requesting that information come in with the capital budget report. Page 27, section 18, so we're moving on to just the policy. So there are a number of property-related sections. Section 18 is amending the authority related, BGS's authority related to selling or renting state property. page 28. Right now, BGS has to sell property following a certain process of being sold to the highest bidder at public auction or upon sealed bids. And this language on lines 7 through 9 is allowing BGS to also list property with a real estate agent licensed by the state.
Okay.
And then in subdivision.
Having the
We
electronic
got an
means.
unruly, we got an unruly number going on here. Becky, could you speak to him, please?
Subdivision 2 is also allowing BGS, if they are selling property at auction or by sealed bid, to give notice of that sale by electronic means. Right now, they have to publicize it in at least 3 public places in the town where the property is located and publish it 3 times in the newspaper. And so this just gives an additional way to circulate the notice of that sale. Page 29. So here is section 19 has a number of authorities to sell specific properties. Subsection A deals with 110 State Street in Montpelier. BGS is authorized to sell the property with offering in writing to the city the right to purchase the property. And the city has 1 year to enter into negotiations with the state before that preferential right terminates.
I want to, on both these buildings, on 110 and 108, I want to talk with agency AOA, either Clauser or Brown or whatever, and see if they are, I just want to talk with them before we finalize this and make sure that they're fine with the 1 year, offering it to the cities and all of that stuff. I just think that to offer somebody the right to act within 1 year could miss the whole sales cycle. It really could. And if they really have the intent to buy it, I don't know why they couldn't do it quicker than that, like 6 months. I can tell you how it works in real estate. Again, you guys will be tired of hearing this, but usually how it works in real estate is that somebody does have the right to, if you give somebody the right of first refusal, what you do is you market that property, and with the terms out there that there is a right of first refusal, and then somebody makes a offer on that property, knowing full well that there's a right of first refusal, that party that has the right of first refusal can act on it for the price that was offered, or not. It sounds like to me, and Becky, Dan, Nicholas, it sounds like to me we're just going to give them a year to make a decision before we market the property. We're going to say, hey, we're going to sell this property. You have a year to decide what you want to do with it. I think that they should be forced, if they have an actual interest in the property, either Montpelier or Burlington, they should let their intent be known a lot sooner than a year. Why burn a year up? Just wondering whether they're going to act on it or not. That's my thought on it.
We'll have to put more money in repairs.
So exactly, and we might have to put more money in repair. So I'd like to get them in here. Yep.
When Sean Brown came in, that was one of the items he spoke about, is reducing that.
Okay.
So I'm not like speaking for the administration here, but I just remember hearing that was something that they were concerned about.
Yeah.
So I think that
So
was-
let's,
No, I totally agree with you, but what's missing here is they aren't getting the price that the city or the town can respond to.
they should not put the price on what the city or the
No,
town
no,
should
no, no,
respond
but
to.
the process you are explaining, I
Right.
think is a better process.
Right.
Because then people know what you're talking about, and you could give the city or the town 2 months to make up their
Because what-
mind instead of a year, because this actually says that the city could start entering into negotiations within a year. So that would be more than a year.
Right,
So
exactly.
why go through that? Just
Right.
to have it marketed,
Right,
get a price, have maybe 2 months for the city to decide, because the city would know in the meantime that that was gonna happen, so they could do their due diligence in the meantime. But I totally agree with you
so
that the
let's
standard
get them
process
in
is better.
here, let's get them in here and hammer out some language on
Yeah.
here. You guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Linda,
I just asked, they come in tomorrow, so I can add that to the list of things. to
okay, so we're gonna be on section 19, and, all the way into, all the way into section, let's see, it must be 20s in there, where's 20?
Here's your
On page
31.
31.
Okay,
No, that's the same
okay.
thing.
Yeah,
There's your thing there. Oh, wait.
yeah, so there it is. So sections 19 and section 20, so we talked with AOA and hammer out some language that we could be happy with.
And so that was the same process essentially for 108
Yeah,
Cherry Street, but the sale in subsection B for Stanley Hall and Watson Hall is a little different. So BGS is authorized to subdivide, sell, or otherwise dispose of a certain parcel of land at the Waterbury State Office Complex that housed the former Stanley Hall and the adjacent parking lot in Watson Hall. And BGS is asked to notify the town of their right to purchase that property, so that the authority to sell is just to the town. And the town of Waterbury has to take, certain steps have to be taken for this sale. The select board has to take formal action indicating their interest in the property. BGS has to do a site survey of the properties. BGS has to determine that no other state department or agency has a use for the property, and the deed has to include a restriction limiting the use of the properties to housing.
I am lost, Becky, over where you're at. I'm sorry.
I'm on
Page
page 30, and
Oh,
these
okay.
list of conditions are in lines 3 through 10.
Okay, I see you now. Thank you. Okay, good.
And then if the town does not accept the offer, the BGS will have to get approval from the legislature to sell to another company.
Okay,
So on line 11 there, it says in a timely manner, you might
so we'll talk to
tweak that a little.
We'll talk to them as well. Yeah, we'll talk to them when they come in. They're coming in tomorrow.
Well, they've been asked to.
Okay.
Ingles, look, I got 5 buyers.
That's right.
You got to 2 o'clock this afternoon, otherwise gone.
Well, you gave him an extra hour?
He had-
You gave him an extra
He
hour?
had it sold. That's what he said. I got 5 buyers for it. I'll make mine. I'll give you another hour. You know, that's all right. Don't hurry.
Be careful how much time you give them.
A lot of buyers wanted it. Yeah, and this doesn't even say that they market it. So this is
Exactly.
a completely different process, which probably has a reason behind it.
Probably does. Let's find out.
Yes.
Yeah, they wouldn't be marketing it because this authority to sell is just to the town of Waterbury, so they're not
So
marketing.
they'd have to come to the legislature with
So
authority
someone's
to
going
sell to somebody else.
So they're gonna have to negotiate, I mean, are they gonna do appraisals or anything, just to make sure the price is right? Or do they just,
I think BGS, oh, well, I won't speak for BGS.
Let's ask them.
Yeah.
yeah,
They're
I
gonna
mean,
come
there's
in,
not,
they're gonna come in, we'll have a list of questions for them. We'll ask them.
yeah.
Page 31, section 20, the relocation of state employees. This is directing that prior to the sale of 108 Cherry Street, BGS works with the city of Burlington to find another location in downtown Burlington to relocate state employees to provide client services. So those are like the direct care services.
So those are what we're gonna talk to again as well, so we're gonna flag that, we'll flag that. And have that conversation as well.
Okay, section 21 is amending,
That's the section I want.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
okay.
they're good with it.
Yeah, well, that's when we did that, right? Okay, good.
Great. Okay, section 22 on page 33. This would be adding in statute, new language on how BGS and DOC design and plan for correctional facilities. So this has BGS, has to coordinate with DOC on the design and planning for any maintenance, renovation, or construction of a two-state correctional facility to ensure that evidence-based design principles for wellness environments are incorporated into the design and planning phase of a project.
So I like that concept of what we had. I like everything that we've seen. Has Department of Corrections taken a stance on that's the way, the direction that they want to go? Or are they being told in this instance that's what they're gonna be done?
I don't actually recall.
Okay, so let's get them in. We'll talk to them, we'll get them in. I can't argue that I would love to see that, but let's get them in and see if that's gonna be on section 22.
Yes.
Department of Corrections, probably BGS.
I think both.
Both of them, okay,
Yeah, because the restriction is on BGS.
so let's get them, yeah, let's just get them in and
Yeah.
make sure they're not being handicapped to being told that that's what they're gonna do and that's what they're not prepared to do. I hope that's what they wanna do, but let's get them in. And we'll have a discussion with them.
Page 33, section 23, the language starts on the next page, but this has to do with some language associated with the Northwest State Correctional Facility, the appropriation for the booking expansion, so that is in section 2 of the bill. So first in subsection A, by August 15th, this is asking the Secretary of Human Services to request federal funds to support construction at the facility, which houses federal detainees, including U.S. ICE detainees. The Commissioner of Finance and Management is then asked to only release the funds, oh, I'm sorry, it's in section 3, not section 2. In section 3, upon notification from the Secretary that the request was submitted.
So what's the point of that?
To try to get federal funds to help support construction at that facility since it houses federal detainees
Okay.
in addition to state.
Thanks.
Subsection B, there's some intent language about the booking expansion design at the Northwest State Correctional Facility. First, that there would be renovations made to the HVAC system. Second, that there'd be, it would include enhanced employee amenities, including amenities to address employee health and wellness needs. Third, the use of renewable energy, and then fourth, the use of evidence-based principles for wellness environments for supporting trauma-informed practices.
So this is DOC as well? Or is it?
Or
This-
BGS.
This is, I mean, BGS is doing the work at this facility.
Okay, so why they're there, again, I hope that they want to go in the direction that it says, but let's just ask them why they're in here. Let's just ask them if that's what they're prepared to do. Is that handicapping them? Is it whatever? We'd like to encourage them to see what, to do with what we saw in Maine and all of that, but are they prepared to go in that direction? Can they do that? Can they do the renewables like it says? Can they do the things that they want to do? So let's just make sure that they're prepared to do that before we tell them that they're going to, and then not be able to. So let's have her say with it.
Page 34, section 24, replacement women's facilities, site location proposal and design intent. So for a site location proposal for these women's facilities on or before January 15th next year, BGS is asked to submit a site location proposal for replacement women's facilities for justice-involved women to this committee and the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions. There's some intent language about the site proposal that when evaluating site locations, preference shall be given to state-owned property. And the proposal shall consider both co-locating facilities in a campus-style approach for operational efficiencies and the need for separate facilities at different locations. There's a reporting requirement.
Which I'd like to see deleted. I think we already decided that, haven't we?
We're beginning September and December, so that's September, October, November, so that's 4 reports.
And that would be on the site location proposal.
I think we struck that on the other version.
I think it was more of the other, I think they're being more in depth. I think this is more kind of being on the location reporting as far as how they're coming with that. But let's talk to them. Let's, they're gonna be in here, so let's just talk to them and see if it's realistic.
I think it's overly restricted.
Okay,
That's just my view.
well,
Should we,
I hear ya.
well, these are gonna be, if it's siting reports, this is gonna be the stuff that you talked about that's pretty intense, where towns get alerted and will, you know, these will be reports that we will read. But should we be talking to the Judiciary Committee, have them in, or Dick Sears,
no,
about facilities and trauma informed and all that kind of stuff?
no, let's just talk with these guys. That's the way ahead of us. Let's just see if see what their direction is, and if they can get there, if they can get to that point. Let's just get them in and see, you know, the people that are all set. Thank you. Let's get the BGS and Department of Corrections in and just see if they can get to that point. Then go from there. We're a long ways from nothing yet. Before we have, I mean, I know what other people's wishes are. I know what other people would like to see. Probably a lot of us in this committee would like to see in that direction, the main model. Let's just see if we can get them to that.
Well, just one other thing, just aside from the main model, there's the issue of the detainees, which are almost half of the people that we have. And there might be another way to house them. And I didn't realize that people were interested in that or concerned about that. But at our caucus, people did express concerns about that, which could make the whole system less expensive. So I just think that detainees, that is something that.
People have that information.
Yeah, let's just see.
Right, but just I think there's some.
Maybe
willingness
maybe
to
you'll.
do something different.
Maybe you'll spawn some questions after we meet with the first people first. So I'm not gonna say, no, we might
Okay.
not have other people in, but let's
Okay,
see what we find out with the first group of people first.
okay, great.
And just to follow up on a point that was asked earlier of, with respect to facilities, there, on the children's inpatient, the youth beds, it looks like there was a note for FY '23 BAA that the funding was pulled until a feasibility study would be completed. And so I think that feasibility study might be available. Do you have that date there? Oh, it was supposed to be done at the end of March. So I think there's a possibility that funding could be resurrected in the budget if, once the feasibility study is completed.
So that's $3 million. So do we do anything about that or just know?
I
about it?
don't think that's in this, I think it was in the appropriations committee that the language associated with that was moved to, so I can try to get
That's-
more information on the report, the feasibility study report. See if that's completed yet.
So you're gonna see my attitude change a little bit on some of the women's prison stuff as far as on some of the timelines. Senator Collmore, I hear you got descriptive language. I hear you, about that. I guess, government works slow, we know that. But in the meantime, we've got 108 detainees in probably an inhumane situation as it could be in Chittenden County. And it's not us that are in there that are suffering. And yes, I know they're in there for a reason. I understand that. But they're in a building that we all know that they shouldn't be into. So as far as to push the timeline to get us quicker to a decision made to get us a new facility for those people are something that I'm willing to push some timelines on. And to push it down the path to make decisions quicker. Now, as Senator Harrison, you said to Senator Mazza, and Senator Mazza has said before, yeah, communities balk and communities put up fights and all that stuff. But to put a push on this to get us quicker to a site, I'm willing to push some timelines and to make it to just push it a little bit harder than I normally would agree with.
Good.
So that's kind of why you see me change my tune a little bit on something like this, because it is impacting other people's lives. And I think it's, as sometimes government forgets about those people. They claim that they don't, but they do. And so that's why you'll see me a little bit different with some of this stuff. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate that. I've been getting emails from people about don't build new prisons, and what I think is being lost on the efforts of organizations that want people to write to us about this is don't build new prisons, as if we're adding prisons to a system that's already functioning. It's so dysfunctional. And what the truth is, I think, is that these prisons are just inhumane places right now, and we're not building new prisons. We are building replacement facilities for people who are just being tortured, basically, without natural light, and it's, so I think the word has to get out just how bad this is, and it's not we're building new prisons to expand the prison system. We are building new facilities to improve.
If they could see our thought
the
process.
judicial.
If they could see that place in Maine.
Yeah, if they could see our thought process and what we're trying to do, and really about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to help. I wish they would see that. I agree with you.
And I'm gonna push back on every single person you trust me, because they're not getting, I think, the true situation.
So that's kind of why I'm pushing a little bit harder on some of this stuff right here.
Okay, and I'll yield to that, Mr. Chair. I understand. My point was only that the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services watched the same stuff we watched, agreed with it 100%. I think is already on board with the project in the way that this is described. And I don't really see any need for a monthly report, but I will yield to you on that.
Well, let's ask her.
Okay.
Let's ask her. Let's ask the people that come in the room. Let's ask them. And but let's have the same thought process with them as what we just talked about, and to put it out there. And I felt that they're not thinking the same thing, but that we just wish you would push a little harder.
Okay.
So that's all. And it's for 108 people that are sitting elsewhere that are, yeah, I just, I know they're there for a reason. I understand that. But they're, we are charged with to be humane. And I don't know that we are.
That's right.
No, that's true.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yes.
So
It's like oh God, I did it a few times.
terrible. Okay, I'm gonna go. We're almost done. I'm gonna go get through this.
Okay, so for section 25, the replacement women's facilities, there's a DOC report. Subsection A has some intent language that it's the state's long-term goal and vision for justice-involved individuals, that their reentry, that they includes their reentry into the community through a system of supports grounded in restorative justice principles. And then subsection B has a report due by DOC November 15th to this committee House Corrections and Institutions and the Senate and House Judiciary Committees regarding the proposed size and scale of replacement women's facilities. And the report looks at proposed allocations of beds in correctional and reentry facilities, bed types for specialized populations in each facility, and data and rationale used to inform the size of each facility.
Again, I'm gonna push on that, but I also wanna make sure that we're not setting them up for failure. Okay, so if there's no way, if they're gonna be able to do something on November 15th, 2023, they gotta be big people, and they gotta tell us that. But I wanna push on it. So that's, it is what it is. They can only do with what they can do. But I want to push as hard as we can on that, but be realistic on our timeline. If you can't do it to that, then let's change the date on that after we hear the testimony. But I'm going to be pushing on it. You'll see that.
I'm just curious why it's a plural facilities. We only have one women's facility right now.
Well, I think they're talking about reentry as well. So they're
So
talking
they want to
about,
have two separate.
yeah, they're going to have,
not
yeah, they want to,
Facilities, okay.
they're going to have it. I don't know how it's going to be, whether you guys went to the main one. Did they had a reentry and they had
It was
a
a separate building.
separate, okay.
But
so-
same site, right? Same
Yeah, well,
campus.
but noticeably different. I mean, like different parking lot, different entry.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so the language on page 35 with the site location, page 35, lines 2 through 5, is trying to address, when they're looking for site locations, are they considering co-locating or whether there's a need to separate them at different locations. So part of what BGS is going to be looking at is, are you looking for a site for co-location or two separate sites?
You want to be by one second.
Right, but is it a co-locating gonna? I thought that was relative to the St. Albans and the men's facility.
This is in the section on the replacement buildings.
Right, no, I understand, but I thought one of their goals, and which is, I think they should consider everything, was to have the facility in St. Albans as part of that campus. So that might be what that refers to. I don't know.
Well, I think they're asked to look at state-owned land, so
Yes.
if they own the land in St. Albans, they should be looking at whether that site
Yeah.
location is appropriate
We saw
for both of these facilities as well.
Yeah. Great.
Page 36, section 26, there's some language associated with the Washington County Superior Courthouse renovations in Barry. This is asking BGS to engage the city of Barry on options for renovating the existing Superior Courthouse for finding a new site location for the building by September 15th. Section 27 is, okay, so this is amending session law that was first enacted in 2020. So during COVID, the legislature got use of a certain space in the Capitol complex. And there were a number of different locations and rooms listed, and this has been, excuse me, amended since 2020. And so currently, the remaining rooms the legislative branch has exclusive use of is on page 37, and that is at 109 State Street, so it's rooms 264, 267, 268, 270 on the second floor. And that authority to have exclusive use ends June 30th, 2023, and this would be extending that to 2024.
And that's the pavilion.
Yes. Section 28 is setting up a special committee to look at the schematic, the programming options and the schematic design for the expansion of the State House. So currently BGS has a contract with Freeman French Freeman to develop programming options that will be the basis for the schematic design of the State House expansion. And under the contract, the programming options will be finalized in June and the schematic design in November, both when the General Assembly is not in session. And so there's intent language here that the General Assembly wants to approve the programming option for a schematic design plan for the expansion as soon as possible to allow BGS to move forward with the design development phase of the expansion. And I think you should have BGS come in on this, but I believe that their contract
they-
with Freeman French and
They are
Freeman.
coming in. We had them, I was confused on that, but they're coming in. That's what we're coming, that was that section 13, 14 and 15.
Here's
Was
what-
it?
yeah.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay, so they're coming in, they're coming in tomorrow.
Okay,
Okay, so what they're gonna come in tomorrow is talk about the state house design and then the Newport, courthouse replacement.
so my understanding is that they already have a contract with Freeman French and Freeman to do all of this work. So it's a timing issue of when the programming options are approved to sort of move
Thank you.
forward with, for Freeman French and Freeman to move forward with the development phase of the design. So this is why the special committee is being set up in subsection B, which consists of the JLMC and the chairs of the two institutions committees to review and approve or recommend changes to that schematic design so that, they can make a decision to move forward.
Is authorized to proceed with anything to do with steakhouse expansion. Is that a vote of the whole assembly? Is that
It will be.
we're spending all this money. Who gave them the direction?
The first one, I think what we spent last time was $500,000, and that came from one of the programs, the federal money. That was federal money. And this 250 that they have right here is coming from, well, it'd be bonded dollars. So they're bonding the money. So the governor didn't put it in. It was,
Direction didn't come from the governor.
it did not come, it come from the House.
Right, the House to proceed.
Well, so far, it's coming from the House, which they have voted on. So the House has voted to proceed, and now it's to the Senate. And yeah, so the Senate hasn't voted on it yet.
They spend money on something that isn't officially endorsed.
And bonded.
Yeah, you're heading down the street here with $30 million and $40 million. That's what the latest I heard. Now that's a crack.
No, it is. It really, really is.
Especially.
I don't know, Senator Mazza, if it's something that can be stopped right now because there's too many. I think what you can try to do is to keep it at a minimum of what has been spent so far. And as of right now, it's under $1 million, which is a lot of money. I think it's 750,000 that we've probably, I think it was 500,000 that we spent last year. And now we're at 250 right now. So we're under $1 million to determine whether that is moved, whether it can move forward. I hear you. But I don't think that this is, I don't think a decision is going to be made until you have a number that everybody can vote on. And I think you gotta try to get to that number as cheap as you can get, with as much fact as you can get for somebody to make a decision on. Because I don't think it's gonna go away until it happens.
Somebody's made the decision to proceed with this project.
There's a lot of people that want to see the project move forward for
I
sure.
guess, I mean, they must be doing it legally, I don't know, I don't think they're bypassing anything, but I'm just confused about where the authority is coming from.
Well, we're gonna have them in tomorrow.
Okay.
The authority so far has just been in terms of the
Legislative,
design. Yeah, it's been legislative authority to move forward with the contracts for the design documents, and there is a contract in place. So this work is underway because there was authority for that. But of course, if the legislature, no construction can actually happen unless the legislature acts to appropriate funds.
I think to move it, I think to get to your point, Senator Mazza, is it's just not gonna stop until you actually have the number where they have to make a decision whether they're gonna build it or
Whether it's
not.
30 million or 20.
Exactly.
You vote on it.
Exactly right. And I think you're not gonna stop it until you get to that point. And that's at the point where it gets stopped. What are you spending it there?
Because that's gonna take a big hunk of your pocket.
Yeah.
And guess what? You're gonna be part of it because the Joint Legislative Management Committee was the chair of us. And you will have the authority to authorize
That's right,
or not.
so it's not the house.
Oh, it's a joint committee.
Well, it's the authorization for the programming options.
Right.
So this isn't for the actual
Right.
construction, it's
No.
just, here are the sort of options that you can choose for going forward with
But
the
when
schematic.
When it's
design.
endorsed by this group, then you're in trouble. I mean, not in trouble, but you
Right.
are committed to it, I think.
Right, well, I think they're gonna come at a point where it's going to be a decision that needs to be made, and somebody, they're gonna have to decide what they wanna do.
But you get it, Vicky.
Yeah. You get the 50.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, good, that gets us through it.
There are 3 more sections.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I do
Yeah.
have to be upstairs in 5 minutes, so I'll go through this.
Okay.
Section 29 is amending the statutory authority of Commissioner of BGS. And this is asking BGS to consult at least 2 times per month with the Sergeant of Arms on any maintenance, renovation, or construction projects for the State House or other legislative space.
They're just saying they shall have the authority, they can if they'd like, right?
It's a shall, I don't know.
It's a.
Shall have the authority, they don't say shall, they say.
I think the idea is that it is,
They-
yeah, directing them to communicate.
What's that mean, lawyerese, Becky?
I mean, it is, I think the idea was that they shall, well, yeah, I guess it shall have the authority to consult.
Authority's a weird word when you're making
Yeah.
someone do something, it sounds like you have the responsibility to do it.
Yeah, I think the idea was that they do have the responsibility to.
Is it set elsewhere by law? Is it something that we can't strike because it is already
It is.
there?
It is something, this is new language.
There's new language? Okay, let's strike it.
Page 39. There is a repeal of a sunset in section 30. There's a program through A&R where private loans can be made to private entities for clean water projects, and this was set up, I believe, in 2018. And it was set to sunset this year at the end of June, and this would be repealing that sunset so that the program could keep operating.
With no sense.
No sunset.
I think it'd be helpful to know what these are.
Let's get a minute.
Yeah.
And then the final change is in section 31. This is just fixing an error in drafting from last year's bill, which had an appropriation going to public safety rather than to BGS for the construction of the Williston Public Field Station. And it needed to go directly to BGS. And I think it was just sort of the accounting or issue for them that it was going to public safety. So it was a request to change the appropriation.
So we're backdating the appropriation.
We're just amending last year's session law to have the funding go to BGS rather than to public safety.
But aren't we in 2022 now?
Yeah, this was amending last year's capital bill. The money was appropriated to public safety directly, so it's striking out the 3.5 million to public safety and just having it go to BGS for public safety instead. So it's not new money, it's just changing who it.
No, I understand. It's just we're correcting an error. So
Yes,
are we in FY 23 now?
yes.
So we're backdating the FY 22. So it's just some sort of accounting thing, but I'm just noting
There was
it.
a typo, you're supposed to be, my
I don't
understanding
know,
is it was
it's
supposed to
not,
be BGS all along, right?
yeah, it's not backdating it, I think it's just,
Redirect.
yeah, it's just.
Yeah, but it's a fiscal year that already happened. I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm just
That's
noting
right,
that.
Well, so in capital appropriations, as Becky has stated, you're appropriating in a fiscal year, but those monies carry forward.
Yeah.
And so currently, public safety has the spending authority when it should lie with BGS. So, when BGS incurs expenses, public safety has to reimburse them, which is a complicated process. So it's better to just I think what the administration wants is just for BGS to have the spending authority, so they don't have to be, dealing with
Totally understand,
transferring money.
but maybe it hasn't happened yet. Did this action happen? Did the building get built?
No.
You
I think-
appropriated.
Okay, so then you're just, like, we're not changing something that already happened in the past where money was spent.
The money is being spent over multiple years, so to the extent that money has been spent,
It already wound up.
it
there.
already wound up at BGS anyways.
Yeah.
But now going forward, as money is spent, BGS will have the spending authority, so they don't have to ask DPS to
Yeah.
reimburse.
Saves a stamp.
It's for the construction of the field station, so it's not completed yet. I think it's
So it's in process.
in process. You'd have to have BGS in to talk about where they are in the process, but it's not a completed project.
All right, well, we have accountants who know how to do that.
Mr. Chair, I have
Yeah,
one
yeah.
more nit before you run away. I'm sorry, you're late. Line, on page 17, lines 3 and 4, the Vermont Veterans Home is mentioned twice, and that's unlike any other form that I see in this bill, where we just say it's for the Veterans Home for maintenance, period. Why is that redundant? And maybe it's redundant for a reason.
Okay, so subsection A is the FY '24 appropriation, and this is sort of the same issue. So this is going to BGS for the Veterans Home,
For
for
maintenance,
maintenance at the home.
period. Can we just say period after maintenance, like in all the other ones?
I think it's, I think it's clarifying like what, so there's the name of the entity and then the sort of facility that the maintenance is being done at, and they happen to be the same name.
The fact this section is titled Veterans Home doesn't also clue us in to where the money's supposed to go. The fact that in every other bullet point, it talks about the Veterans Home, so
I don't know
Could
if the
possibly
Veterans Home
mistake
actually owns more than one building. I can look into that
Thanks.
for clarity purposes, but typically we would name, for the appropriation, we would, for like the line item, we would name the building and what is being done there. If they don't own any of, if there's no other property associated with it, there's an argument that we could,
I think it's the exact same thing. Now it's much better. Yesterday, remember when we went over the Veterans Home, and then down here, this is exactly in English what that is. It's just outlined the funding source. So this sum comes from BGS, but goes to the Veterans Home. The other one is appropriated directly to Veterans.
but it's still just one.
Huh?
It's still just one place. It's still
Yeah,
one
yes, it
entity,
is.
and it's
Yeah.
just for maintenance. So we don't really need to say pet shelter because it's obvious that it's at the Veterans Home because there's only one of them. That's what I'm getting at. It just seems really redundant to say it 3 or 4 lines to me. As an editor,
well, this.
looking at all the way.
The
Yeah, yeah.
second appropriation there is the funding going directly to the vet's home, so it has to be separated out.
Mhm.
Than the line item that's going
Sure,
to.
I
know what
wouldn't say
you're
to
saying.
take out the BGS, I just.
We like being redundant,
So
so.
Harrison, you wanted to, natural resource section 31, you wanted them in. I hear you.
I think it would be good, yeah.
Sorry.
Wait, what?
Sorry,
Section
sorry.
30,
I'm
right?
turning it over.
31, I thought.
At our expense.
The repeal of, are you talking about the
You
A
said,
and
it-
R?
yeah,
Yeah, that would probably be Eric Blatt.
they're coming in too, Eric Blatt, so let's put a note on that when Eric Blatt comes in on the dams. He's gonna put it on the dams, so.
But he's not actually participating in
Oh,
it.
he isn't, okay,
So I should ask him in second, and that's.
probably, yeah.
Section 30,
Is it 30, 31,
Yeah,
isn't it?
Maybe
Is
just
it
check
30 or
with the
31?
section 30. Okay,
Which one?
Question about section.
The repeal of.
I have to run
We do.
upstairs.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Okay, all right, okay, I'm on the new sheet. That's the old sheet. I'm on the new one, I think.
Oh,
That's,
okay.
that's where it is. We're on the same thing.
Yeah.
We're on the
okay,
same thing. Page 39 on the new sheet,
And section.
section 31,
Yeah,
repeal.
good. Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you also said something about A and R section 17, line 180.
Section 1,
Municipal pollution.
right here, yeah. actually, it's section 17, yeah, line 180. Yeah, that's the big one. That's the 10 million, and they knocked it down to 4 million. I just want to see if they can be okay with that, or why they got clipped $6 million right here.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's section, line 180.
yeah,
So
section
I'll have
17,
A&R
line 180.
on 180 and
Yeah.
the,
Yep,
section
section
30.
31 on the bill, on the, as the bill as the House passed. Okay, committee,
Wait,
oh,
sorry.
no
The
problem.
passed by house is the one where it's, don't we want to be the passed by house?
We want to use that one going forward, yes.
Yeah.
We want to use the new one that Linda just gave us.
The one that
warm-
said
the warm
as
one.
So
passed,
that is
as passed
section
by
30.
house.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is, just different page numbers.
Okay,
Well, section different.
I was on the,
sections.
I switched back.
So
I
section-
I
You
apologize.
got me there.
Yeah, no, I apologize.
Section 30, the repeal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere along the way, I gotta screw it
And
up.
then if there's another A and R one, let me know about it, because
It is.
Section 17 on the spreadsheet.
Section 17, line
On the
180.
spreadsheet. line
That's the
180.
10 million and they got clipped
Yeah, yeah.
6.
okay,
So that's-
that's the one I want to
Yeah.
understand more.
Yeah,
So I
we-
was
we-
in our
we do
thing
too
on
as
those
well.
two.